Coach Brian here, and I have nutrition tip number 2. This one is about carbs and fat. So carbs, short for carbohydrate, and fat, they're two of the macronutrients, two of the main macronutrients, the third one of course being the protein. But we hear a lot in the nutrition world about high carb, low fat, or vice versa. Carbs are bad, fats are bad, carbs are good, fats are good. So just to clear things up, carbs are not bad. Carbohydrates are not bad for you. You need them. Fats are also not bad for you. You need them. However, most popular diets out there, they tend to manipulate the amount of carbs that you get and the amount of fat, because when you put them together and you put them in high dosages, so when you do high carb and high fat, that's when you end up with things like a dad bod or too much fat around you. So if you followed my first nutrition tip, that's probably more important than anything else, which was eating whole foods, eating real food, not buying any of the processed stuff, just eating the stuff that actually, you can make it yourself. So if you're having oatmeal, I talked about adding bananas to it instead of buying oatmeal that already comes with it. So if you follow that, you're pretty good. But now you want to take it to the next level. You want to take the next step in the nutrition world. Well, now you do have to look a little bit at carb sources and fat sources, but you can't think of it as just one is good and one is bad. Most popular diets, like I said, manipulate those, and they're going to say high carb, low fat, or high fat and low carb. So just to give you guys an idea here, here's some lists of things that are carbs and that are heavy on the fat. So things like fruit, bread, pasta, cereals, oats, sugar, beans, those are things that are examples of carbs. Things that are examples of fat are oils, butters, creams, avocado, and then any of the fatty meats like bacon or ground beef. I've seen some ground beef that's like 70-30, it has high fat content. So whatever it is that you're going to be, most things like, for example, ketogenic is a diet out there, and that one is very high fat and very low carb. So they're eating lots of bacon, I'm going to have some examples over here actually, putting a lot of oils in their food, things like avocado. So this in itself is actually pretty healthy, right? So if you cook some meat with some avocado oil or some olive oil, that's actually pretty good, right? Especially in a ketogenic diet. A lot of paleo type diets will also include this stuff. So if you're doing that, those people who follow ketogenic, they're not eating things like the carb sources that I said over here. Things like sweet potatoes, bananas, oats. To them, this stuff is bad, right? But then we go into diets that follow more of like the low fat and high carb. And in fact, most athletes probably follow something like that, where they're eating lots of carbs in their day and not as much fat. And again, that's just to manipulate the fat storage in you. And so you don't end up with a dad bod, you end up with like a lean body. So for those people, oats, pastas, cereals, things like that are still one ingredient sources, this stuff is very good, but you want to avoid things like this here. So I didn't want to go too much in detail with what each diet is. I'm going to do that in the next video and give you guys some suggestion as to what I like to follow. But if you're not going to follow any kind of diet, you just kind of like to do it on your own, you like to understand it a little bit more on your own, then make sure that you're not doing things that are high carb and high fat. Examples of that are, I have some Kit Kat over here. Calories are 210, 11 grams of carb, 27 grams of carbs and 11 grams of fat. So that's something that's pretty high in fat, pretty high in carbs. We all know that if you eat too much of this stuff, you're not going to end up looking good. It's not very good for you either. So whatever diet you decide to follow, or maybe you want to make your own, just make sure you're not keeping the content high on both. And for the most part, protein is something that you can keep relatively high. You're probably not going to overeat protein anyway. But whatever that secondary source is, whether it's a fat because you're keto, or maybe it's the carb sources because you're following something like a low fat, high carb diet, whatever it is. I just wanted you guys to be clear on that. Carbs aren't bad. That's the stigma right now. Everyone thinks carbs are bad. They're not bad. It just depends on which diet you follow. In the next video, I'll be telling you guys some specific some meal plans and some specific diets that we can follow as well. But we'll see you then. Thanks.